Imagine boarding a plane and discovering the young pilot is the spitting image of yourself, the son you never knew existed. For tech billionaire Daniel Reeves, one fateful flight shatters his perfect life when he comes face to face with Eli, the living proof of a passionate college romance he abandoned 23 years ago. As Daniel desperately tries to connect with his newfound son, his vengeful fiancée Clara unleashes a public scandal that threatens to destroy them all. Will the woman Daniel once loved forgive him for walking away? Can a family forged in secrets and lies ever truly heal? Subscribe now and tell me in the comments if you believe some mistakes can never be forgiven, because this family's turbulent journey will make you question everything you thought you knew about second chances. Daniel Reeves stared at his watch, tapping his foot on the shiny airport floor. His private jet had some problem with the engine, and now he had to fly on a regular plane like everyone else. For a man who ran one of the biggest tech companies in Atlanta, this was not how things usually went. "First class is now boarding," a voice called over the speaker. Daniel grabbed his expensive leather bag and joined the line. The morning sunlight streamed through the big airport windows as he handed his ticket to the gate agent. "Have a good flight." "Sir," she said with a polite smile. Daniel nodded and walked down the long tunnel to the plane. The flight to Miami would take less than 2 hours. He just needed to check on a new office building there. Then he could fly back home tomorrow. As he stepped onto the plane, a young pilot stood near the cockpit door, greeting passengers with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard." "Mr. Reeves," the pilot said. Daniel froze. The voice was unfamiliar, but the face, it was like looking in a mirror from the past. The young man, maybe 22 or 23 years old, had the same straight nose, the same sharp jawline, the same blue eyes that Daniel saw every morning in his bathroom mirror. Even the way the pilot's mouth curved when he smiled was exactly like Daniel's own. "Sir." "Is everything okay?" the pilot asked, his smile fading into concern. "Yes, fine," Daniel managed to say, his mouth suddenly dry. He forced himself to move past the young man, stealing another glance at the name tag on his uniform, E. Jordan. Daniel found his seat by the window and sank into it, his heart pounding. He pulled out his phone and quickly searched for the flight details. This was a training flight for new pilots from the Miami Flight Academy. The boy, E. Jordan, must be one of their students. As the plane filled with passengers, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the young pilot's face. There was only one explanation that made sense, but it seemed impossible. Maya Jordan, his college girlfriend. The woman he'd loved more than anything before his career took over. The woman he'd left behind. They had broken up just before graduation, almost 24 years ago. Daniel remembered their last fight like it was yesterday. Maya wanted to follow her dream of becoming a pilot. Daniel was headed to Silicon Valley for a big job. They couldn't make it work long distance, they'd said. But was there more to the story? The plane pushed back from the gate, and Daniel looked out the window. His reflection stared back at him, but in his mind, he saw the young pilot's face overlaid with his own. "This can't be happening," he whispered to himself. The plane took off smoothly, rising into the clear blue sky. Daniel leaned back in his seat, his mind racing back to his college days at MIT. He'd met Maya during their sophomore year in the campus library. He was studying computer science. She was in aeronautical engineering. She was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, with warm brown skin, bright eyes full of dreams, and a laugh that made everyone around her smile. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" she had asked that first day, pointing to the empty chair at his table. 4 years later, they were in love and talking about the future. Or at least they had been, until Daniel got the job offer from Tech Innovations in California. A starting salary that made his eyes widen. A chance to build something big. "We can try long distance," he'd told Maya one night in their favorite coffee shop near campus. "For how long, Daniel?" "A year, 5 years," Maya had asked, stirring her coffee slowly. "You know long distance rarely works. What about your flying? You're going to be traveling all the time anyway." "That's different," she'd said. "I'll have a home base. You're moving across the country with no plans to come back." Their fight had escalated. Harsh words, tears, and finally, a painful goodbye 2 weeks before graduation. Daniel hadn't seen or spoken to Maya since then. Pride and hurt had kept him from reaching out. And soon he was so busy with his career that she became a memory. A beautiful one, but a memory nonetheless. now flying to Miami. Daniel wondered if that goodbye had been even more consequential than he'd realized. The plane landed with a gentle bump, pulling Daniel from his thoughts. He waited impatiently as passengers gathered their belongings and filed out. Finally, he stepped off the plane, nodding stiffly to the young pilot who stood by the exit. "Thank you for flying with us." "Sir?" E. Jordan said politely. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. Daniel nodded again and hurried into the terminal, his mind made up. He needed to know more. Finding a quiet corner in the busy airport, Daniel pulled out his phone and searched. Maya Jordan, pilot Miami. The search results loaded, and there she was. Maya Jordan, senior flight instructor at the Miami Flight Academy. Her profile picture showed an older version of the woman he remembered, her face a bit more mature but still beautiful, her hair styled differently, her smile confident and professional. The bio beneath her photo read, "Flight Instructor, Miami Flight Academy, 20 years of experience, specializing in commercial pilot training." Daniel stared at her picture for a long time, memories flooding back. Then he did some quick math in his head. If they'd broken up 24 years ago, and that young pilot was in his early 20s, his heart raced as he called his assistant. "Vanessa, I need you to cancel my dinner with Clara tonight," he said. "Something important has come up in Miami. I'll be staying a few extra days." "But sir, Ms. Clayton has been planning this dinner for weeks," Vanessa protested. "It's for your anniversary," Daniel had completely forgotten. He and Clara had been engaged for exactly 1 year. "Tell her it's an emergency," he said firmly. "A business emergency. I'll make it up to her when I get back." After hanging up, Daniel stared at Maya's picture again. Then he looked up the address of the Miami Flight Academy. It wasn't far from the airport. The Miami Flight Academy was a modern building with large glass windows and a view of the runways. Daniel parked his rental car and sat for a moment, gathering his courage. He hadn't planned what to say. He didn't even know if Maya would want to see him after all these years. Walking into the lobby, Daniel asked the receptionist where he might find Maya Jordan. "She's in the simulator room with students until 4, the young woman said. "You can wait in the observation area if you like." Daniel followed her directions and found himself in a room with large windows looking into a training area. There, standing in front of a group of young pilots, was Maya. Time had been kind to her. Her dark hair was shorter now, cut in a professional style that framed her face beautifully. She wore a crisp white shirt with pilot's epaulets and dark pants. She moved with confidence as she explained something to the students, pointing at a large screen showing flight patterns. Daniel watched, mesmerized. She was still the Maya he remembered, passionate, focused, alive with energy. And somewhere in that group of students was the young man who looked just like him. As if feeling his gaze, Maya suddenly turned toward the observation window. Their eyes met across the room, and Daniel saw the exact moment of recognition. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly, and then her expression hardened into something like anger. She said something to the students, then strode toward the door. Daniel took a deep breath, preparing himself for the confrontation. Maya burst into the hallway, her eyes flashing. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, keeping her voice low but intense. "Hello, Maya," Daniel said softly. "It's been a long time." 24 years, she said flatly. "Not long enough, apparently." "Why are you here, Daniel?" "I was on a flight today," he began, struggling to find the right words. "One of your students was the pilot E. Jordan. Eli," Maya said, her voice catching. "His name is Eli." "Eli," Daniel repeated. "He looks exactly like me, Maya." The hallway seemed to shrink as they stood there, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. "Is he my son?" Daniel finally asked, though he already knew the answer. Maya's silence was confirmation enough. She looked away, her jaw tight. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel asked, hurt and confusion filling his voice. "Tell you what? That I was pregnant when you left for California? That I found out 2 weeks after our breakup?" Maya's words came out sharp and quick. "You made it very clear that your career came first, Daniel. You didn't look back once." "I had a right to know," Daniel said, "and Eli had a right to a father who wanted to be there," Maya shot back. "Not someone who might resent him for changing his big plans." A door opened down the hallway, and a group of students emerged. Maya straightened, composing herself. "You should go," she said quietly. "Eli doesn't need you coming into his life now and turning everything upside down. He's doing great. We're doing great. Maya, please. Oh, she cut him off. We have nothing to talk about. Go back to your life, Daniel. We've managed just fine without you for 23 years. Before Daniel could respond, Eli appeared in the hallway, still in his pilot's uniform. Mom, he called. Captain Blake wants to know if you can sign off on my hours for today. I'll be right there, Maya called back, her voice instantly warmer. She turned back to Daniel, her eyes pleading now. Please, just go. With that, she walked away, leaving Daniel standing alone in the hallway. He watched as she joined their son, and walked out of sight. Outside, the Florida heat hit Daniel like a wall as he stumbled to his car. He sat behind the wheel, not starting the engine, just staring at the building where his son had grown up without him. The roar of airplane engines filled the air as a jet took off nearby. Daniel felt rooted to the spot, unable to leave, unable to process the enormity of what he'd just discovered. He had a son who didn't know he existed, a son who was following in his mother's footsteps, not his father's. Daniel pulled out his phone and looked at Maya's picture again. Then he made another call. Vanessa, I need a hotel in Miami for a week, and clear my schedule, all of it. That night, in a small house 15 minutes from the flight academy, Maya paced her living room while her best friend Lena sat on the couch, eyes wide. He just showed up? After all these years? Lena asked, shaking her head in disbelief. He was on Eli's training flight, Maya explained, running her hands through her hair. Total coincidence. But he saw Eli, and you know how much they look alike. So he knows now, Lena said quietly. Maya nodded, sinking onto the couch beside her friend. He knows. What are you going to tell Eli? Nothing, Maya said firmly. Daniel will go back to his life in Atlanta, or wherever he lives now, and everything will stay the same. Lena raised an eyebrow. You really think he's just going to walk away now that he knows he has a son? Maya sighed, reaching for the photo album on her coffee table. She opened it to a page with baby pictures of Eli. His bright blue eyes, Daniel's eyes, stared back at her. The truth always comes out, Maya, Lena said gently. Maybe it's time. I've protected Eli for 23 years, Maya said. I'm not going to let Daniel waltz in and hurt him now. Is that what you're afraid of? That Daniel will hurt him? Or that Eli will love his father and somehow love you less? Maya didn't answer. She just stared at the baby photos, remembering how alone she'd felt when Eli was born, how she'd looked at his tiny face and seen Daniel there, how she'd promised herself that she would be enough for her son, even if it meant being both mother and father. In New York, Clara Clayton scrolled through her phone messages while sipping expensive white wine in her penthouse apartment. Daniel's cancellation had thrown off all her plans. Their anniversary dinner was supposed to be special. She'd even invited some friends from the society pages to join them later for drinks. Now she was alone on a Thursday night, and something didn't feel right. Daniel never cancelled on her. His business trips were always meticulously planned. Clara pulled up Daniel's flight information, which he always shared with her for safety. The flight to Miami had landed on schedule that morning. His return flight was supposed to be tomorrow afternoon, but now he was staying for a week. She tried calling him again, but the call went to voicemail. Daniel, it's me, she said, keeping her voice light. Just checking in to see how those meetings are going. Call me when you can. After hanging up, Clara did something she'd never done before. She logged into the travel account they shared, where they booked flights and hotels. There were no Miami meetings on Daniel's calendar, but there was a hotel reservation, the Grand Beach Hotel, for a week. Clara's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her wine glass as she thought. Then she opened her laptop and began a search. Daniel Reeves, Miami, she typed, then hit enter. Nothing unusual came up. Just old news articles about his company's expansion. She tried another search. Daniel Reeves, Miami connections. Again, nothing interesting. Then, on a hunch, she tried one more search. Daniel Reeves, MIT alumni, Miami. A social media post appeared. A 20-year reunion photo from MIT. Daniel wasn't in it, but the caption listed several names, including Maya Jordan Reeves, now Jordan, our high-flying pilot in Miami. Clara's eyes narrowed. Maya Jordan Reeves, she repeated softly. Interesting. She took another sip of wine and began a more targeted search. It was going to be a long night. The next afternoon, Daniel sat in his rental car outside the Miami Flight Academy again. He'd barely slept. All night, He'd looked at old photos of himself and Maya from college, stored in a digital folder he hadn't opened in years. There was Maya on their first date, smiling shyly at the camera. Maya in his dorm room, surrounded by textbooks, her hair falling over her face as she studied. Maya at the beach during spring break, laughing as waves crashed around her. He'd loved her so much. How had he let her go so easily? Now, watching young pilots walk in and out of the academy building, Daniel wondered if Eli would come out. What would he say if they met again? "Hi, I'm your father" seemed too dramatic, too much like a movie scene. A knock on his car window startled him. He looked up to see Eli standing there, confusion on his young face. Daniel rolled down the window, his heart pounding. "Yes? You're the guy from the flight yesterday, right?" Eli asked. "My mom said you were an old friend of hers." "That's right," Daniel said, surprised that Maya had mentioned him at all. "I'm Daniel Reeves." "Eli Jordan," the young man said, extending his hand. "Mom said you two went to college together." Daniel shook his son's hand, feeling a surge of emotion at the contact. "Yes, we did. MIT a long time ago." "Cool," Eli said. "You're not a pilot, though." "No, I went into tech," Daniel explained. "I run a company called Reeves Innovations. We make software." "Oh yeah, I've heard of that," Eli said, looking impressed. "We use some of your flight simulation programs here at the academy." The irony wasn't lost on Daniel. His software was helping to train his own son. "I was just heading in for my afternoon flight check," Eli said, gesturing toward the building. "Nice meeting you, Mr. Reeves." "Nice meeting you too, Eli," Daniel replied, watching as his son walked away. Just then, Daniel's phone rang. Clara's name flashed on the screen. He let it go to voicemail, guilt washing over him. He hadn't been honest with her about why he was staying in Miami, but how could he explain this situation? "Sorry I missed our anniversary, but I just discovered I have a 23-year-old son with my college girlfriend." Daniel started his car and drove away from the academy, his mind a swirl of emotions. He had no plan, no idea what to do next. But one thing was clear. He couldn't just leave Miami and forget about Eli. For the first time in years, something mattered more to Daniel than his company, his success, or even his relationship with Clara. He had a son, and somehow he needed to make things right. As evening fell over Miami, Daniel sat alone in his hotel room, staring at his phone. 3 missed calls from Clara. He needed to call her back, but what would he say? The truth seemed impossible to explain over the phone. Finally, he dialed her number, rehearsing a story about important business meetings in his head. "Daniel?" "Finally," Clara answered on the first ring. Her voice was sharp with annoyance. "Where have you been all day?" "I'm sorry about dinner," Daniel said, trying to sound normal. "Something came up with the Miami office. We're having some problems with the new building." "Problems that will take a week to fix?" Clara asked. "That's not like you to stay so long." "It's complicated," Daniel said, rubbing his temples. "The contractor made some big mistakes. I need to handle it personally." "You sound strange," Clara said. "Is everything okay?" "Just tired," Daniel assured her. "How are things in New York?" "Fine, boring without you." She paused. "I miss you." Guilt twisted in Daniel's stomach. "I miss you too." After they hung up, Daniel walked to the window of his hotel room and looked out at the Miami skyline. The city lights sparkled against the dark sky, reminding him of the night he and Maya had snuck onto the roof of their dorm building to watch a meteor shower. "Make a wish," Maya had whispered as a streak of light crossed the sky. "I wish we could stay like this forever," Daniel had replied. But they hadn't. Instead, he'd chosen a different path, not knowing who he was leaving behind. The next morning in New York, Clara sat at her glass dining table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her tablet. As the head of a successful public relations firm, she had contacts everywhere, and those contacts were proving very useful now. "Found anything on Daniel's college girlfriend?" she asked, speaking into her phone. "A bit," replied Tessa, her most trusted employee. "Maya Jordan is a flight instructor in Miami, very respected in her field. She has a son named Eli who's training to be a commercial pilot." "How old is the son?" Clara asked, setting down her coffee cup. 23, Tessa answered. "Born about 8 months after she and Daniel graduated from MIT. Clara felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. "Send me everything you find on both of them. And book me on the next flight to Miami." "You think Daniel's seeing her?" Tessa asked carefully. "I don't know what he's doing," Clara said. but I intend to find out." After hanging up, Clara walked to her closet and began packing a small suitcase. Daniel was hiding something, and she wouldn't wait in New York wondering what it was. At the Miami Flight Academy, Daniel had returned, this time with a plan. He approached the front desk with confidence. "Good morning," he said to the receptionist. "I'd like to speak with the director about a potential sponsorship opportunity." 20 minutes later, Daniel sat across from Captain James Blake, the Academy's director, explaining his interest in funding a scholarship program for promising young pilots. "That's very generous." "Mr. Reeves," Captain Blake said, looking impressed, "may I ask what sparked this interest in our academy specifically?" "I've been following your program's success rate," Daniel said smoothly, "and I believe in supporting excellence." He didn't mention seeing Eli on the flight or his history with Maya. This was just a way to have a legitimate reason to be around the academy and around his son. "Well, we'd be delighted to have your support," Captain Blake said, standing to shake Daniel's hand. "Let me arrange a tour of our facilities." As they walked through the building, Daniel tried to appear interested in the simulators and classrooms, but his eyes kept scanning for Maya or Eli. "And this is our main training area," Captain Blake said, opening a door to a large room where several young pilots were practicing flight procedures. Daniel's heart jumped when he spotted Eli among them, focused intently on a simulator. The young man's expression of concentration was exactly like Daniel's when he worked on complex coding problems. "That's one of our top students," Captain Blake said, following Daniel's gaze. "Eli Jordan. He's going to make an excellent pilot." "I'm sure he will," Daniel murmured, unable to look away from his son. Just then, Maya walked into the room from another door. She froze when she saw Daniel standing with Captain Blake. The look she gave him could have melted steel. "Captain Blake," she said stiffly, walking over to them. "I didn't realize we had a visitor." "Maya, this is Daniel Reeves from Reeves Innovations," Captain Blake explained. "He's interested in sponsoring a scholarship program for us." "We've met," Maya said coldly. "In college." Captain Blake looked between them, sensing the tension. "I see. Well, I have a meeting to attend. Maya, perhaps you could finish showing Mr. Reeves around." Before Maya could protest, Captain Blake had excused himself, leaving them alone. "What are you doing?" Maya whispered furiously, keeping her voice low so the students wouldn't hear. "I just want to get to know him," Daniel said, nodding toward Eli. "By pretending to be a sponsor?" Maya shook her head in disbelief. "This isn't a game, Daniel. That's my son's future you're playing with." "Our son," Daniel corrected quietly. Maya's eyes flashed with anger. "You lost the right to call him that when you walked away." "I didn't know, Maya," Daniel insisted. "If I had known about him." "You would have what?" Maya challenged. "Given up your big career. Stayed with me? We both know that's not true." Before Daniel could respond, Eli looked up from his simulator and noticed them. He waved, then walked over. "Hey, Mom," he said, then turned to Daniel with a smile. "Mr. Reeves, right? From yesterday?" "Yes, that's right," Daniel said, his throat suddenly tight with emotion. "What brings you back to the academy?" Eli asked. Maya jumped in before Daniel could answer. "Mr. Reeves is considering a scholarship program for students." "That's awesome," Eli said enthusiastically. "So he could definitely use more funding for the advanced simulator time." Daniel couldn't help but smile at his son's passion. "I'll keep that in mind." "I should get back to practice," Eli said. "Nice seeing you again, Mr. Reeves." As he walked away, Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of pride mixed with regret. His son was confident, friendly, ambitious, everything Daniel had been at that age. But Daniel had missed every moment of Eli's life until now. "He's incredible," Daniel said softly. For just a moment, Maya's face softened. "Yes, he is." Then the hardness returned to her eyes. "Look, Daniel, I don't know what you're planning, but you need to leave us alone. Eli has a big exam coming up. He doesn't need distractions." "I'm not trying to distract him," Daniel assured her. He trailed off, not sure how to express the empty ache he felt. "You just what?" Maya pressed. Daniel looked her directly in the eyes. "I just needed to see what I missed." The simple honesty of his words seemed to catch Maya off guard. For a brief moment, her defensive posture relaxed. "1 week," she finally said. "You can come and watch the training sessions for 1 week. As a potential sponsor. But you don't tell Eli who you are. Not yet, maybe not ever." "That's my condition." Daniel nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Maya." "Don't thank me," she replied. "Just don't make me regret this." Later that afternoon, as Daniel was leaving the academy, Captain Blake caught up with him in the parking lot. "Mr. Reeves," he called. "A word, please." Daniel stopped waiting as the older man approached. "I've known Maya for 15 years, Captain Blake said without preamble. "She's the best instructor I've ever worked with, and Eli is like a son to me." "I understand," Daniel said carefully. "No, I don't think you do," Captain Blake continued. "I don't know exactly what's going on between you and Maya, but I can see there's history there, and I can see the way you look at Eli." Daniel felt exposed, like Captain Blake could read his every thought. "If you care about them," Captain Blake said firmly, "don't make this messy. They've built a good life here, a life that doesn't need complications." "I'm not trying to complicate things," Daniel insisted. Captain Blake gave him a skeptical look. "No one ever does. But these things have a way of getting out of hand." He sighed. "Maya's worked too hard to have her reputation damaged by rumors or scandal. So has Eli. This is a small community, Mr. Reeves. People talk." Daniel understood the warning. "I'll be discreet," he promised. "See that you are," Captain Blake said, then walked back toward the building. Daniel sat in his car for a long time thinking about what Captain Blake had said. He hadn't considered how his presence might affect Maya's professional life or Eli's training. The last thing he wanted was to cause problems for either of them, but he couldn't walk away, not now. Not when he'd just found his son. That evening Daniel was surprised when Maya called him. "Can we meet?" she asked, her voice businesslike. "There are some ground rules we need to discuss if you're going to be around the academy this week." They agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop near the beach. When Daniel arrived, Maya was already there, sitting at a table in the corner, staring out at the ocean. Daniel ordered a coffee and joined her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I talked to Captain Blake," Maya finally said. "He knows." "Knows what exactly?" Daniel asked. "That you're Eli's father," Maya said, keeping her voice low. "He figured it out. The resemblance is pretty obvious to anyone paying attention." Daniel nodded, relieved in a way. "Is he going to tell Eli?" "No," Maya said, "but he's concerned about how this might affect things at the academy." "So am I." "I understand," Daniel said. "I'll keep a low profile." Maya took a sip of her tea, then set the cup down carefully. "Here's how this will work. You can come to the academy as a potential sponsor. You can observe training sessions. You can even talk to Eli about flying. But you cannot tell him who you are. Not without talking to me first." "Agreed," Daniel said quickly. "And this arrangement ends after 1 week," Maya continued. "When you go back to your life in—" She paused. "Where do you live now?" "Atlanta," Daniel supplied. "I moved there 10 years ago," Maya nodded. "When you go back to Atlanta, we go back to our lives here. No disruptions. No confusion for Eli." Daniel wanted to protest, to say that 1 week wasn't nearly enough time, but he knew pushing too hard might cause Maya to shut him out completely. 1 week, he agreed reluctantly. Just 1 week to make it right. Maya's expression softened slightly. "You can't make 23 years right in 1 week, Daniel." "I know," he admitted. "But it's a start." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of waves crashing on the nearby beach filling the space between them. "He has your smile," Maya said suddenly, staring into her tea. "And your laugh. Sometimes when he laughs, I close my eyes and it's like hearing you again. Back in college." Daniel's heart ached at the thought of Maya recognizing pieces of him in their son all these years. "Does he know anything about me?" Daniel asked. Maya shook her head. "Not much. Just that you were someone I knew in college, who went on to build a successful company. I never told him you were his father." "What did you tell him about his father?" Maya looked uncomfortable. "I told him his father wasn't ready for a family, that he had dreams that didn't include us." She met Daniel's eyes. "Was I wrong?" The question hung between them. Daniel wanted to say yes, that he would have stepped up, that he would have been there for them. But he wasn't sure that was true. At 22, with a job offer that promised wealth and success, would he have chosen Maya and a baby instead? "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I'd like to think I would have made a different choice if I'd known. But I can't say for sure." Maya seemed to appreciate his honesty. "At least you're not lying to yourself," she said. "That's something." As they finished their drinks, the conversation shifted to safer topics. What had happened in their lives over the past 2 decades, their careers, their achievements. You did it, Daniel said with genuine admiration. You became a pilot, just like you always wanted. And you built your tech empire, Maya replied. Just like you planned. There was no bitterness in her voice now, just acknowledgement of the paths they had chosen. When it was time to leave, they walked together to the parking lot. The Miami night was warm, stars visible despite the city lights. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Daniel said, and for letting me be around Eli, even if it's just as a sponsor. Maya nodded, then hesitated. He's a good kid, Daniel. The best. Whatever happens this week, remember that. I will, Daniel promised. As Maya turned to walk to her car, Daniel called after her. Maya? She looked back at him. I'm sorry, he said simply, for not being there. For missing everything. Maya's expression was unreadable in the dim light. Good night, Daniel, she said softly, then got into her car and drove away. Daniel stood in the parking lot long after she was gone, the weight of 23 lost years heavy on his shoulders. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the academy early. He had arranged with Captain Blake to observe a full day of training, supposedly to evaluate the program before committing to the scholarship. In reality, he just wanted to see Eli in action. He sat in the observation room, watching as students practiced in the simulators. Eli was focused, precise, his movements confident as he handled the controls. Later, during lunch break, Daniel found himself in the academy cafeteria, getting a coffee. When Eli approached, "Mind if I join you, Mr. Reeves?" the young pilot asked, setting down his tray. "Not at all," Daniel replied, trying to hide his excitement. "So Mom says you run a big tech company," Eli said, taking a bite of his sandwich. "That must be interesting." "It has its moments," Daniel said, "but I imagine flying is much more exciting." Eli's face lit up. "It's the best feeling in the world. Being up there, seeing everything from above. Nothing compares to it." The passion in Eli's voice was so familiar to Daniel. It was exactly how Maya used to talk about flying. "What made you want to become a pilot?" Daniel asked, hungry for any information about his son's life. "My mom, mostly," Eli said with a smile. "She's been flying since before I was born. Some of my earliest memories are of sitting in the cockpit with her, watching her work the controls. It seemed like magic." Daniel nodded, imagining Maya taking their baby into the cockpit, showing him her world. "What about your dad?" Daniel asked carefully. "Was he a pilot too?" Eli's expression changed, becoming more guarded. "I don't have a dad. I mean, obviously I have one biologically, but he wasn't in the picture." "I'm sorry," Daniel said, genuine regret in his voice. Eli shrugged. "Don't be. My mom was enough. She's always been enough." He took a sip of his water. "Anyway, after I graduate, I'm hoping to get a job with one of the major airlines. Commercial flights at first, but eventually I'd love to fly international routes." As Eli talked about his dreams, Daniel felt a mix of pride and sadness. His son had grown into an impressive young man with clear goals and ambitions, and Daniel had played no part in it. Through the cafeteria windows, Daniel noticed Maya standing in the hallway watching them. Her expression was complex, concern, nostalgia, and something else Daniel couldn't quite read. "Your mom's done an amazing job," Daniel said sincerely. "You're very lucky." "I know," Eli agreed with a warm smile. "She's the strongest person I know." After lunch, Daniel continued observing training sessions. During a break, he found himself standing next to Maya in a quiet hallway. "He's doing well," Daniel commented. "He's the top student in his class," Maya said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "His final licensing exam is in 2 weeks. That's incredible," Daniel said. "He seems so focused, so sure of himself." Maya nodded. "He's always been that way. Even as a little boy, once he set his mind to something, that was it." "Like his mother," Daniel said with a small smile. "Like both of us, I guess," Maya admitted. They stood in silence for a moment, watching through the window as Eli talked animatedly with another student. "How long are you engaged?" Maya asked suddenly. Daniel looked at her in surprise. "How did you know I'm engaged?" Maya pointed to his hand. "Tan line on your ring finger." "You took off your engagement ring, but you usually wear one." Daniel felt his face flush with guilt. "A year," he answered. "Her name is Clara. Does she know where you are? Who you're with?" "No," Daniel admitted. "She thinks I'm handling business problems at our Miami office." Maya frowned. "You're playing a dangerous game, Daniel. Lying to your fiancé. pretending to be something you're not at the academy. How do you think this ends? I don't know, Daniel said honestly. I just know I couldn't walk away without getting to know him. And after your week is up? Then what? Daniel had been avoiding that question, even in his own mind. I don't know that either, he said quietly. Maya's expression softened. Be careful, Daniel. Not just for our sakes, but for yours too. The truth has a way of coming out when you least expect it. As Maya walked away, Daniel realized she was right. He was building a house of cards, and sooner or later it would collapse. The only question was who would get hurt when it did. The next few days fell into a pattern. Each morning, Daniel would arrive at the academy, clipboard in hand, pretending to evaluate the program while really watching his son. Eli would wave when he saw him, sometimes stopping to chat between training sessions. Maya kept her distance, but Daniel often caught her watching them with a mix of worry and something that looked almost like longing. On the third day, Eli approached Daniel in the hallway. Mr. Reeves, a bunch of us students are doing extra simulator practice this afternoon. Would you like to see how it works? Daniel's heart leaped at the invitation. I'd love to. That afternoon, Daniel sat in the back of the simulator room, watching as Eli guided a virtual plane through a storm. His hands moved confidently over the controls, his voice steady as he communicated with the virtual air traffic control. He's good, isn't he? Said a voice beside him. Daniel turned to find Captain Blake taking a seat next to him. Incredible, Daniel agreed, unable to hide his pride. You know, Captain Blake said quietly. He's been asking about you. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? He's curious why you're spending so much time here. Says you remind him of someone. Though he can't figure out who. Captain Blake gave Daniel a meaningful look. Kids have good instincts. Before Daniel could respond, the simulator session ended and Eli emerged with a triumphant smile. How'd I do, Captain? Perfect landing, Jordan, Captain Blake said with approval. Mr. Reeves here was just telling me how impressed he is. Eli's face lit up with pride, and Daniel felt a surge of joy at having caused that reaction. Thanks, Eli said. Hey, some of us are going to the cafeteria for coffee. Want to join us, Mr. Reeves? Daniel nodded, trying to appear casual. Sure, why not? In the cafeteria, Daniel sat with Eli and 3 other student pilots. They talked excitedly about flying, trading stories about their training experiences. So what made you interested in our academy, Mr. Reeves? Asked a young woman named Tasha. Daniel hesitated. I've always been interested in aviation, he said carefully. And I believe in supporting young talent. Mr. Reeves is considering a scholarship program, Eli explained to his friends. That would be amazing, said another student. Marco. More simulator time would help us all. As they talked, Daniel noticed how the other students looked up to Eli. He had a natural leadership quality, a quiet confidence that drew people to him. It was strange and wonderful to see parts of himself in this young man who had grown up without him. Your mom must be proud of you, Daniel said to Eli as the conversation shifted. Eli smiled warmly. She's been my biggest supporter. Taught me everything I know about flying. You're lucky to have her, Daniel said, meaning it. I know, Eli agreed. It wasn't always easy for her, raising me alone while building her career. But she never complained, not once. Daniel felt a sharp pang of guilt. While Maya had been struggling as a single mother, he had been climbing the corporate ladder, never knowing what he was missing. She's an amazing woman, Daniel said softly. Eli gave him a curious look. You two were friends in college, right? What was she like back then? Daniel's mind filled with memories. Maya laughing as they ran through the rain. Maya curled up studying in his dorm room. Maya's eyes shining as she talked about her dreams of flying. She was brilliant, Daniel said honestly. Determined. Passionate about flying. And she had this laugh that could light up a room. He smiled at the memory. Some things never change. That sounds like Mom, Eli said, looking pleased. She doesn't talk much about those days. Through the cafeteria windows, Daniel spotted Maya walking by. She paused when she saw him sitting with Eli and the others. For a moment their eyes met, and Daniel saw a flash of emotion cross her face before she continued walking. From her office window, Maya watched Daniel laughing with Eli and his friends. It was like looking at a scene from another life. A life where Daniel had stayed, where they had raised their son together, Dangerous thoughts, she muttered to herself, turning away from the window, but she couldn't deny the ache in her heart. Seeing them together, noticing the similar ways they gestured when they talked, the identical tilt of their heads when they were listening intently, it was both beautiful and painful. Maya had always been proud of how well she'd raised Eli on her own. She'd built a good life for them, given him everything he needed. But watching him with Daniel, she wondered if she had been selfish in keeping them apart. No, she told herself firmly. I did what was right at the time. But doubt had crept in and Maya couldn't shake it. In New York, Clara sat on her bed staring at her phone. Daniel had called earlier with another vague update about problems with the contractors that required his attention for a few more days. You sound different, she had told him. What's really going on, Daniel? Nothing, he had insisted. Just tired from all these meetings. Clara didn't believe him. In the year they had been together, Daniel had never lied to her, at least not that she knew of. But now something was off. Her tablet pinged with an email notification. It was from Tessa with the subject line, "Found something." Clara opened the email to find several images. The first was a social media post from the Miami Flight Academy, showing a group of students and instructors. Among them was a striking black woman in her mid-40s, Maya Jordan, according to the caption. The second image was a close-up of a young pilot, pulled from the Academy's website. Eli Jordan, student pilot, read the caption. The third image was the most telling, a side-by-side comparison of Eli Jordan and Daniel. The resemblance was unmistakable. Well, well, Clara murmured, a cold feeling settling in her stomach. So that's what you've been doing in Miami. She opened her laptop and booked a flight to Miami for the next morning. Then she called a friend at the Miami Herald. Jeff, it's Clara, she said when he answered. I might have an interesting story for you. How would you like to be the first to report on tech mogul Daniel Reeves's secret family in Miami? The next day at the Academy, Daniel noticed people looking at him differently. Whispers followed him down the hallway, and even Captain Blake seemed more reserved than usual. Is something wrong? Daniel asked when he passed the director's office. Captain Blake sighed. People are talking, Mr. Reeves. You've been here every day this week, spending a lot of time with our students, especially Eli Jordan. I'm evaluating the program, Daniel said, sticking to his cover story. Are you? Captain Blake asked skeptically. Because some people are suggesting you might have more personal reasons for being here. Daniel felt a chill. What kind of personal reasons? There's a rumor going around that you and Maya Jordan are reconnecting, Captain Blake said carefully. Romantically. That's not true, Daniel said quickly. We're just old friends. Captain Blake raised an eyebrow. Old friends who haven't spoken in over 20 years, until you suddenly show up and start hanging around her son. People notice things, Mr. Reeves. They draw conclusions. What kind of conclusions? The kind that could complicate Maya's professional life, Captain Blake said firmly. She's worked hard to build her reputation here. I'd hate to see it damaged by gossip. Daniel felt a wave of guilt. He hadn't considered how his presence might affect Maya's standing at the Academy. I understand, he said. I'll be more careful. As he left Captain Blake's office, Daniel spotted Maya hurrying down the hallway, her expression tense. She barely acknowledged him as she passed. Later that afternoon, Daniel found out why. Maya was waiting for him in the parking lot when he left the Academy. We need to talk, she said, her voice tight with anger. They walked to a quiet corner of the lot, away from curious eyes. What's wrong? Daniel asked, though he had a feeling he knew. This, Maya said, holding up her phone. On the screen was an email with the subject line, Professional Conduct Inquiry. The Academy Board wants to meet with me tomorrow to discuss concerns about my personal relationships affecting my professional judgment, Maya said bitterly. 3 guesses what that's about. Daniel winced. I'm sorry, Maya. I heard there were rumors that I'm having an affair with a wealthy investor who's suddenly taking an interest in my son, Maya finished. Do you have any idea what that looks like? What people are saying? I'll fix it, Daniel promised. I'll talk to the board, explain that there's nothing inappropriate going on, and tell them what exactly? Maya demanded. The truth? That you're actually Eli's father, who abandoned us 23 years ago and now wants to play daddy. That'll go over well. Daniel flinched at her words. I didn't abandon you. I didn't know about Eli. Maya closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. When she spoke again, her voice was calmer. "Look, I know this isn't entirely your fault, but my career is on the line here, Daniel. Everything I've worked for. Let me help," Daniel insisted. "I know people. I can make this go away." Maya looked skeptical but nodded. "Fine, but be discreet. The last thing I need is more attention." That evening, Daniel made several calls. He contacted a friend who knew the chairman of the Academy's board. He arranged for a substantial donation to the Academy's scholarship fund. He did everything in his power to ensure that Maya's reputation remained intact. Then he texted her, "All taken care of. The board won't be meeting with you tomorrow. I'm sorry for the trouble." Maya's reply came an hour later. "Thank you." Daniel stared at those two words for a long time. Then he added, "Can we meet? To talk about what happens next?" After a pause that felt like forever, Maya responded, "Diner on Ocean Drive, 9 p.m. The diner was a small, quiet place with booths along the windows overlooking the ocean. Daniel arrived early and chose a booth in the back, away from other customers. When Maya walked in, something about her reminded him so strongly of the girl he'd known in college. Maybe it was the way she scanned the room, or the slight furrow in her brow when she was thinking. "Hi," he said as she slid into the booth across from him. "Hi," she replied, her voice softer than it had been earlier. They ordered coffee, and for a few minutes neither spoke. The sound of gentle rain starting outside filled the silence. "I talked to the board chairman," Daniel finally said. "Explained that we're old friends from college who reconnected by chance. Said the rumors were completely unfounded." Maya nodded, staring into her coffee. "And he believed you?" "I can be very convincing," Daniel said with a small smile. "And the $50,000 donation to the scholarship fund probably helped." Maya looked up sharply. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Daniel said simply. "Besides, the Academy does need better simulators. Eli said so himself." At the mention of their son's name, Maya's expression softened. "He's been talking about you, you know. Says you're actually pretty cool for a tech guy." Daniel couldn't help the rush of pleasure he felt. "Really?" Maya nodded. "He likes you," which makes this whole situation even more complicated. "What do you mean?" Maya sighed, running a finger around the rim of her coffee cup. "My week of letting you hang around is almost over, Daniel." "What happens then? You just disappear from his life as suddenly as you appeared?" The question hit Daniel hard. He hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead. "I don't want to disappear," he admitted. "I know we had an agreement, but—" "Maya, he's my son. Now that I've met him, now that I know him, how am I supposed to just walk away? And what about your life in Atlanta? Your company? Your fiancé?" Maya challenged gently. Daniel had no good answer. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the windows. "I don't know how to fix this," he finally said. "But I know I can't just go back to my life and pretend Eli doesn't exist. I can't lose him again." "You never had him to lose," Maya pointed out, but her voice held more sadness than anger now. "That's not fair," Daniel said quietly. "You never gave me the chance." Maya looked down at her hands. "Maybe not. But I did what I thought was best for him at the time." They fell silent again. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating Maya's face for a brief moment. Daniel was struck by how beautiful she still was, how the years had only added character and depth to the features he'd once known by heart. "Do you ever wonder?" he began, then hesitated. "Wonder what? What might have happened if things had been different? If I had known about him? If we had tried to make it work?" Maya's eyes met his. "Sometimes," she admitted. "More often lately. Something shifted between them in that moment. A softening, a tentative bridge across the years of separation." "I should go," Maya said suddenly, reaching for her purse. "It's getting late and I have an early class tomorrow." Daniel nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "I understand." As they stood to leave, the rain outside had become a downpour. Daniel offered his jacket, but Maya shook her head. "I'll be fine," she said. "My car's not far." At the door, she turned to him one last time. "Thank you, Daniel, for fixing things with the board." "It was the least I could do," he replied. Maya hesitated, then said softly, "Don't make me fall again, Daniel. I barely survived the first time." Before he could respond, she stepped out into the rain and hurried away, leaving Daniel standing in the doorway, her words echoing in his mind. The next morning, Daniel was having breakfast in his hotel room when his phone rang. Clara's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," he answered, trying to sound normal. "How's New York?" I wouldn't know, Clara replied. I'm in Miami. Daniel nearly choked on his coffee. What? Why? Surprise, Clara said, her voice deceptively light. I thought I'd join you since your business problems are taking so long to resolve. I'm in the lobby of your hotel. Coming down to meet me. Daniel's mind raced, trying to think of a way out, but he knew he was trapped. Give me 5 minutes, he said. When the elevator doors opened in the lobby, Daniel saw Clara waiting, elegant as always, in a cream-colored dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She smiled when she saw him, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Daniel, darling, she said, kissing his cheek. You look terrible. These meetings must be brutal. What are you doing here, Clara? Daniel asked quietly. I missed you, she said sweetly, and I thought I could help with whatever's keeping you in Miami so long. Her eyes were calculating. Maybe meet some of your business contacts. Daniel felt a chill. Something in her tone told him she knew more than she was letting on. I appreciate that, he said carefully, but it's really just meetings with contractors and inspectors. Nothing interesting. Oh, I don't know about that, Clara said, linking her arm through his. I think your Miami connections are very interesting. In fact, I've arranged dinner tonight with some new friends. I hope you'll join us. And what friends? Daniel asked, a sense of dread growing. You'll see, Clara said with a smile that made Daniel's stomach knot. I've made reservations at Harborview for 7. It'll be fun. Daniel knew he was being backed into a corner, but he couldn't see a way out without raising Clara's suspicions even more. Sounds great, he lied. Perfect, Clara said, squeezing his arm. Now why don't you show me this troubled building project of yours? At the academy that afternoon, Eli was helping Maya clean up her office after a training session. Mom, have you seen the thumb drive with the flight simulation recordings? Eli asked, rifling through a drawer. I wanted to review my landing approach. Check the file cabinet, Maya suggested, organizing papers on her desk. Bottom drawer in the blue folder. Eli knelt by the cabinet and pulled open the drawer. As he searched for the blue folder, his hand brushed against something at the back of the drawer, an old envelope yellowed with age. Curiosity got the better of him. He pulled out the envelope and opened it. Inside was a photograph he'd never seen before. It showed a much younger version of his mother, her belly rounded with pregnancy, standing on what looked like a college campus. Beside her, with his arm around her waist and a proud smile on his face, was a young man Eli recognized immediately, Daniel Reeves. Eli stared at the photo in shock. The resemblance between himself and the young man in the picture was undeniable. Same eyes, same jaw, same smile. Eli, did you find it? Maya called from her desk. Quickly, Eli slipped the photo into his pocket. Not yet, he called back, his voice strained. Still looking, his mind was racing. Why would his mother have a photo of herself pregnant, with Daniel Reeves's arm around her? And why did Daniel look so much like him? A terrible suspicion began to form in Eli's mind, but he pushed it away. There had to be another explanation. There had to be. That evening, Daniel sat beside Clara at a table in Harborview, one of Miami's most exclusive restaurants. Clara had been mysterious about who they were meeting, saying only that they were people connected to Miami aviation. Daniel's heart nearly stopped when he saw Maya and Captain Blake being led to their table by the maitre d'. Maya looked equally shocked, her eyes widening when she saw Daniel sitting with Clara. Maya, James, so glad you could join us, Clara said with a smile, standing to greet them. I'm Clara Clayton, Daniel's fiancée. We're so interested in learning more about your flight academy. Captain Blake, ever professional, shook Clara's hand. A pleasure to meet you, Ms. Clayton, though I must say this is a surprise. The best connections are often unexpected, don't you think? Clara said smoothly. Maya's eyes met Daniel's across the table, a silent question in them. What is happening? Daniel gave a tiny shake of his head, as confused as she was. Please sit, Clara continued. I've already ordered champagne for the table. As they took their seats, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Daniel could see Maya's discomfort, the stiffness in her shoulders as she sat across from him. So, how do you two know Daniel? Clara asked innocently. We're old friends, Maya said carefully. From college, MIT, right? Clara said. Such a small world. And now you're reconnecting after all these years. How lovely. There was something dangerous in Clara's tone that made Daniel nervous. She was playing a game, but he didn't know the rules. Daniel's been very supportive of our academy, Captain Blake said diplomatically. We appreciate his interest in our students' futures. Yes, he's always had a soft spot for promising young talent, Clara agreed. Especially pilots, apparently. Though I never knew about that interest until this week. The waiter arrived with champagne, temporarily halting the conversation. As he poured, the restaurant doors opened and Eli walked in, scanning the room. Maya's face paled. Eli, what are you doing here? Eli approached their table, holding Maya's tablet. You left this in the simulator room, Mum. The receptionist said you were having dinner here. His eyes moved from Maya to Captain Blake, then to Daniel and Clara. Sorry, I didn't realize you had company. Not at all, Clara said brightly. You must be Eli Jordan. I've heard so much about you. Eli looked confused. You have? Clara? Daniel said warningly, but she ignored him. Daniel has been quite impressed with your flying skills, Clara continued. But then talent does run in the family, doesn't it? Eli's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked between Daniel and his mother. I should go, he said. I don't want to interrupt your dinner. Actually, why don't you join us? Clara suggested. There's plenty of room. Before anyone could object, Clara had signaled a waiter to bring another chair. Eli hesitated, then sat down beside his mother, setting the tablet on the table. So, Eli, Clara said conversationally, how long have you been training at the academy? 2 years, Eli replied, clearly uncomfortable. I'm finishing my commercial license next month, and your mother's been your teacher, Clara continued. How nice to keep it in the family. Maya shot Daniel a look, silently pleading with him to do something, but he felt powerless to stop what was happening. As the awkward dinner continued, Eli kept glancing between Daniel and Maya, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When dessert arrived, Clara excused herself to take a phone call, leaving the four of them in uneasy silence. I should get going, Eli said suddenly, standing up. Early flight tomorrow. I'll walk you out, Maya said quickly, rising as well. As they walked away from the table, Daniel saw Eli lean close to his mother, saying something that made her stop in her tracks. She turned to look back at Daniel, her face stricken. Captain Blake sighed heavily. Whatever game your fiancé is playing, it's about to backfire on all of us. Daniel nodded grimly. I know. Outside the restaurant, Maya stood with Eli on the sidewalk, her heart racing. Is it true? Eli demanded, pulling the old photograph from his pocket. Is Daniel Reeves my father? Maya stared at the photo. She had forgotten it was even in her desk. It had been taken during her last semester at MIT, when she was 5 months pregnant, and she and Daniel were still together. Where did you get this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It was in your desk, Eli said. I found it today while looking for the thumb drive. Mom, just tell me the truth. Is he my father? Maya closed her eyes briefly, knowing the moment she had both dreaded and in some ways anticipated for 23 years had finally arrived. Yes, she admitted softly. Daniel is your father. Eli took a step back as if her words had physically pushed him. All these years, he said, his voice breaking. All these years you told me he didn't want us. But he didn't even know about me, did he? Maya reached for him. Eli, please, it's complicated. Did he know about me? Eli repeated, pulling away from her touch. No, Maya admitted. He didn't know until he saw you on that flight last week. Last week? Eli's eyes widened in disbelief. He's known for a week and neither of you thought to tell me. You've both been lying to me, pretending he's just some sponsor. We were trying to protect you, Maya began. But Eli cut her off. Protect me? By lying? By letting me believe my father didn't want me, when the truth is he never even knew I existed. Just then, Daniel came out of the restaurant, having seen the confrontation through the window. Eli, he said, approaching cautiously. Is it true? Eli demanded, turning to face him. Are you my father? Daniel looked at Maya, who nodded slightly, tears in her eyes. Yes, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. I am. Eli stared at him for a long moment, his face a storm of emotions. All this time at the academy, watching me, talking to me. That was just what? Some kind of experiment, getting to know your science project. No, Eli, it wasn't like that, Daniel insisted. I just wanted to know you. I didn't know how to tell you the truth. The truth, Eli repeated bitterly. Seems like that's in short supply around here. Maya stepped forward. Eli, please. We need to talk about this, all of us. Talk? Eli laughed humorlessly. Now you want to talk? After 23 years of secrets and lies. He looked between Maya and Daniel, hurt and anger evident in his eyes. I need to go, he said, backing away. I can't do this right now. Eli. Wait, Maya called, but he was already walking away, his shoulders rigid with tension. As they watched him disappear down the street, Daniel moved to stand beside Maya. I'm sorry, he said quietly. This isn't how I wanted it to happen. Maya wiped a tear from her cheek. None of this is how I wanted it to happen, she whispered. None of it. Behind them, Clara emerged from the restaurant, her face triumphant. Well, she said coolly. I guess dinner's over. Daniel turned to her, anger replacing his shock. What have you done, Clara? She smiled, a brittle, humorless expression. Just help the truth come out, darling. Isn't that what everyone wanted? Maya couldn't sleep that night. Eli hadn't come home, hadn't answered her calls or texts. She sat in his room, surrounded by his things. Flight manuals, model planes he'd built as a child, photos of the two of them together. Had she been wrong all these years? Should she have told Daniel about their son? Should she have given him the chance to be a father? The questions haunted her as the night stretched on. By sunrise, Eli still hadn't returned, and Maya's worry had grown into full-blown panic. She called Captain Blake, who promised to check the academy and the hangars. Then, desperate, she called Daniel. Eli never came home last night, she said when he answered. I've looked everywhere I can think of. I'll help you find him, Daniel said without hesitation. I'll meet you at your house in 20 minutes. When Daniel arrived, Maya was already in her car, ready to go. They spent the morning driving around Miami, checking all of Eli's favorite places, the beach where he liked to watch planes take off from the nearby airport, the coffee shop where he studied, the park where he sometimes went running, no sign of him. Where else could he be? Daniel asked as they drove back toward Maya's house. Maya was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then her eyes widened. The hangar, she said suddenly. There's a small private hangar at the edge of the airfield. Sometimes students go there to sit in the older planes, just to think. They drove to the airfield, and Maya led Daniel to a weathered hangar at the far end of the property. Fence-side, sitting in the cockpit of an old Cessna, was Eli. He looked up as they approached, his eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night. Eli, Maya said, relief flooding her voice. Thank God, I was so worried. I needed to think, Eli said flatly. Daniel hung back, giving Maya space to talk to their son. I know you're angry, Maya began. And you have every right to be. But please let me explain. Explain what? Eli asked. How you kept me from my father my whole life. How you lied about him not wanting us. I didn't lie about that, Maya said quietly. When Daniel and I broke up, he was heading to California for a big job opportunity. He made it clear that his career came first. When I found out I was pregnant after our breakup, I believed he wouldn't want to be tied down with a baby. You didn't even give him the chance to decide that for himself, Eli pointed out. You're right, Maya admitted, and that was wrong of me. I was young and hurt and scared. I thought I was protecting both of us. Eli looked past her to where Daniel stood. And you, he said. You find out you have a son and decide to just hang around watching me instead of telling me the truth. Daniel stepped forward. I wanted to tell you, he said honestly, from the moment I realized who you were. But your mother asked me to wait. She was afraid of how it might affect you, especially with your exam coming up. So more lies, Eli said bitterly. More secrets. We were trying to do what was best for you, Maya insisted. By lying, Eli shook his head. That's never what's best. A heavy silence fell between them. Eli stared out the cockpit window at the planes on the runway, his expression distant. I don't forgive you, he finally said, looking at Daniel. Not yet. The words hurt, but Daniel nodded. I understand, Eli turned to Maya, and I need time to process everything. To figure out how I feel about you keeping this from me my whole life. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I love you, Eli. Everything I did because I love you. I know, Eli said, his voice softening slightly. I just need some time. He climbed out of the cockpit and walked past them, heading for the hangar door. Where are you going? Maya called after him. To the academy, Eli said without turning around. I have a flight test to prepare for. As he disappeared through the door, Maya and Daniel stood in the empty hangar, surrounded by old planes and the weight of 23 years of secrets. Will he be okay? Daniel asked softly. Maya wiped away a tear. Eli's strong. He always has been. He'll process this in his own way, in his own time. Daniel nodded, hoping she was right. The morning sunlight streamed through the hangar windows, illuminating the dust in the air, tiny particles suspended, waiting to settle somewhere new. Like all of them, Daniel thought. Suspended between the past and whatever future awaited them, now that the truth was finally in the open. The next morning, Daniel woke to the sound of his phone buzzing. Dozens of notifications flooded his screen, missed calls, text messages, news alerts. Heart pounding, he opened the first alert. The headline made his blood run cold. Tech billionaire Daniel Reeves hides secret family in Miami. Below it was a photo of him with Eli at the academy. Side by side, their resemblance impossible to ignore. The caption read, like father, like son. Daniel Reeves with pilot Eli Jordan, his unacknowledged son from college relationship with flight instructor Maya Jordan. Daniel jumped out of bed and called Maya immediately. Have you seen it? He asked when she answered. I've seen it, Maya replied, her voice tight with tension. It's everywhere, Daniel. The academy's phone is ringing off the hook. Reporters are outside my house. I'm so sorry, Daniel said, running a hand through his hair. This is all my fault. It's not your fault, Maya said with a sigh. It's Clara's. This has her fingerprints all over it. Daniel knew she was right. After the disastrous dinner the night before, Clara had returned to New York without a word. Now he understood why she'd left so quietly. She had been planning this revenge. What about Eli? Daniel asked. How is he handling this? He's furious, Maya said. And hurt. Even more so now that it's public. He won't talk to me. I need to fix this, Daniel said firmly. How? Maya asked. It's out there now. Everyone knows. I don't know yet, Daniel admitted. But I will. I promise. After hanging up, Daniel checked his email. Among the flood of messages was one from the Academy board. He opened it with dread. In light of recent revelations and the resulting media attention, the board has made the difficult decision to temporarily suspend Ms. Jordan from her teaching duties until this matter can be properly addressed. Daniel slammed his laptop shut, fury boiling inside him. Maya was being punished for his mistakes, for Clara's vindictiveness. Enough, he said aloud to the empty room. Enough of this. By afternoon, the story had gone viral. News outlets across the country were running with it. The tech billionaire with a secret son, the flight instructor who had kept him hidden for decades, the dramatic discovery when Daniel boarded Eli's training flight. Some reports painted Maya as a victim, others as a schemer who had kept a father from his son. But all of them treated the story like entertainment. Like the private pain of 3 people was nothing more than a juicy scandal for public consumption. At the academy, Maya cleaned out her office, numb with shock. Her suspension letter sat on the desk, the official wording making it sound like she had done something wrong, something that justified removing her from the job she loved. Captain Blake stood in the doorway, watching with sympathy as she packed her things. This isn't right, he said quietly. You're the best instructor we have, Maya smiled sadly. Apparently that doesn't matter anymore. Not when there's a scandal. The board is panicking, Captain Blake assured her. Once this dies down, will it die down? Maya interrupted. Or will I always be that instructor who hid her son from a billionaire? She placed a framed photo of Eli in a box, him at 18, standing proudly by a plane after his first solo flight. The memory of that day hit her hard. How she had watched from the ground as he took off alone, her heart in her throat with both fear and pride. How is Eli doing? Captain Blake asked. Not well, Maya admitted. They've postponed his license exam. He blames me. He blames Daniel. He blames everyone. He's a good kid, Captain Blake said. He'll come around. Maya nodded, hoping it was true. But the hurt in Eli's eyes when he'd learned about the reporters, about her suspension, had been deeper than anything she'd seen before. I hope so, she whispered. In New York, Clara sat in her office, watching the news coverage with satisfaction. Her plan had worked perfectly. Daniel's reputation was taking a hit, and that secret family he'd been hiding, the family he'd lied to her about, was feeling the heat too. Her phone rang, and she answered without checking the caller ID, Clara Clayton. How could you? Daniel's voice was cold with fury. Clara smiled to herself. Daniel, darling, I assume you've seen the news. You had no right, he said. No right to expose Eli like that. He's innocent in all of this. No one is innocent, Clara replied calmly. You lied to me. For a week, you pretended to be stuck in business meetings while you were playing house with your ex and your secret son. I wasn't playing house, Daniel argued. I was trying to figure things out. I was in shock, and I was supposed to what? Wait patiently while you decided if you wanted your old family back? Clara laughed humorlessly. I don't think so. We're done, Clara, Daniel said firmly. The engagement is over. You don't get to dump me, Clara hissed, her composure slipping. I dumped you the moment I saw that boy's face and realized he was yours. Fine, Daniel agreed. Either way, it's over. But this vendetta against Maya and Eli stops now. They've done nothing to deserve this. Oh, I'm just getting started, Clara warned. You'll lose everything, Daniel. Your reputation, your company's stock value, your precious privacy. By the time I'm done, Daniel cut her off. Goodbye, Clara. He hung up and immediately called his PR team. It was time to take control of this narrative, to protect Maya and Eli the best way he could. It was time for the truth. Eli sat alone in his apartment near the academy, ignoring the knock at his door. It was probably another reporter. They had been calling and showing up all day, hungry for his side of the story, for photos, for any scrap of information they could twist into a headline. The person knocked again more insistently. Go away, Eli shouted. No comment. Eli, it's me, Captain Blake's voice called through the door. Let me in, son. Reluctantly, Eli opened the door to find his mentor standing there, concern etched on his weathered face. I said I didn't want to talk to anyone, Eli muttered, but he stepped aside to let Captain Blake in. You don't have to talk, Captain Blake said, settling into a chair. Just listen. Eli crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. If you're here to defend my parents, I'm here because I care about you, Captain Blake interrupted gently. And because I've watched you work too hard to throw it all away now. I'm not throwing anything away, Eli protested. The academy postponed my exam, remember? Because of all this mess. Temporarily, Captain Blake emphasized. But if you stop studying, stop practicing, that temporary setback becomes permanent. Eli sighed, sinking onto the couch. What's the point? Everyone at the academy is talking about me. About my mom. About my father. The word felt strange on his tongue. How am I supposed to focus on flying with all that going on? Captain Blake leaned forward, his expression serious. Flying is about control, Eli. Control of the aircraft, control of the situation, control of yourself. But life isn't like that. Life is messy and unpredictable, and sometimes completely unfair. So what am I supposed to do? Eli asked, frustration evident in his voice. Focus on what you can control, Captain Blake advised. Your reactions, your preparation, your future. He paused. And maybe try to understand that your parents, for all their mistakes, are just people. People who love you. Eli scoffed. Love? My mother lied to me my whole life. And Daniel, he was perfectly happy not knowing I existed until he happened to get on my flight. Is that what you think? Captain Blake asked. That man has been watching you with such pride these past few days. And your mother, she built her entire life around you. Around lying to me, Eli corrected. Around protecting you, Captain Blake countered. Was it the right choice? Maybe not, but it was made out of love, not malice. Eli didn't respond, but something in Captain Blake's words resonated with him. After his mentor left, Eli didn't turn on the TV or check his phone. Instead, he pulled out his flight manuals and began to study, focusing on the one thing he could control, his dream of becoming a pilot. The next day, Daniel stood before a crowd of reporters in the lobby of his Miami hotel. Camera flashes popped like lightning as he stepped up to the microphones. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. I've called this press conference to address the recent stories about my personal life. He took a deep breath, then continued. 24 years ago, I was a college student at MIT. I fell in love with a brilliant, beautiful woman named Maya Jordan. We had plans, dreams, a future together. But like many young couples, we broke up when our career paths pulled us in different directions. The reporters leaned forward, hungry for details. What I didn't know, what I only discovered last week, was that Maya was pregnant when we parted ways. She gave birth to our son, Eli, and raised him on her own. She gave him love, stability, and a bright future. She's an extraordinary mother and an accomplished professional. Daniel paused, making eye contact with several reporters to emphasize his next points. The fault was mine, not hers, he said firmly. I was so focused on my career, so determined to build my company, that I made it clear nothing would stand in my way, including a relationship or family. Maya made the decision she thought was best for our child. A decision I forced her into by my own ambition and selfishness. He gripped the edges of the podium. I ask that you respect the privacy of Maya and Eli Jordan during this difficult time. They did nothing wrong. If you want someone to scrutinize, to judge, to question, it should be me. I'm the one who wasn't there. I'm the one who missed 23 years of my son's life. And I'm the one who has to live with that regret every day. A reporter called out, "What about your engagement to Clara Clayton?" Daniel answered directly, "That relationship has ended. Ms. Clayton and I have gone our separate ways. Will you be part of your son's life now?" Another reporter asked. Daniel's expression softened. "That's up to Eli, I hope so. I hope he'll give me the chance to know him. But that's his decision to make, not mine." As the questions continued, Maya watched the press conference on her living room TV, tears streaming down her face. Daniel was taking all the blame, shielding her and Eli from the worst of the public scrutiny. His voice cracked with emotion when he spoke about missing Eli's childhood. The fault was mine, not hers, he had said. Words Maya had never expected to hear. She turned off the TV, wiping her eyes. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope that maybe somehow they would get through this. The next afternoon, Maya drove to Daniel's hotel. She hadn't planned to go there, but after watching his press conference, after seeing him take responsibility so publicly, something had shifted inside her. They met in the hotel's rooftop cafe, overlooking Biscayne Bay. The Miami sun sparkled on the water as they sat at a corner table, away from curious eyes. "Thank you," Maya said simply, "for what you did yesterday." Daniel shook his head. "It was the least I could do. I'm so sorry about your job, Maya. I never meant for any of this to happen." "I know," she said softly. "None of us did." They sat in silence for a moment, watching a sailboat glide across the bay. "Have you spoken to Eli?" Daniel asked. "Briefly," Maya replied. "He's still processing everything. But Captain Blake thinks he'll be okay. He's focusing on his flying." "That's good," Daniel said. "That he has something to focus on, I mean." Maya nodded, then asked the question that had been on her mind. "What happens now, Daniel?" "With you, I mean. Will you go back to Atlanta? Try to rebuild your life there." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, in a way he hadn't allowed himself to since rediscovering her. "I don't know," he admitted. "Everything feels different now. My priorities have changed." "Because of Eli?" Maya asked. "Because of both of you," Daniel said quietly. "Seeing you again, meeting Eli, realizing what I missed, it's made me question everything I thought was important." Maya didn't know how to respond to that. Part of her, a part she had buried deep long ago, still felt drawn to Daniel, still remembered how it felt to be loved by him. But too much had happened. Too many years had passed. "I still love you, Maya," Daniel said suddenly, the words escaping before he could stop them. "I think I always have." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. "Daniel, I know it's crazy," he continued. "I know we can't just pick up where we left off 24 years ago. Too much has changed. But my feelings for you, they were still there, just waiting." Maya looked away, overwhelmed by his confession. "Love isn't enough, Daniel." "It never was. That's why we broke up in the first place." "I know," he agreed. "But people change." "I've changed. I'm not that ambitious 22-year-old anymore. I know what matters now." "And what's that?" Maya asked. "Family," Daniel said simply. "Connection. Being there for the people you love." Maya studied his face, searching for the truth in his words. "Prove it," she said finally. "Not with money or grand gestures or press conferences. Prove it with time, with patience, with being there consistently even when it's hard." Daniel nodded. "I will," he promised, "for as long as it takes." As Maya left the hotel, those words echoed in her mind. For as long as it takes. She wanted to believe him. After all these years, all the pain, all the loneliness, she wanted to believe that something good might come from this chaos. That night, Daniel sat in his hotel room, thinking about his conversation with Maya. She was right to be cautious. Words were easy. Actions were what mattered now. His phone rang, a call from Atlanta. His company's board wanted to discuss the public relations situation. Daniel sighed. Right now, his company seemed like the least important thing in his life. After a brief, tense call where he assured the board everything would blow over soon, Daniel pulled out his laptop and began searching local jewelry stores. He found what he was looking for at a small shop near the beach, a custom keychain that could be engraved within hours. The next morning, he called Captain Blake. "I need to talk to Eli," Daniel explained. "Not to pressure him, just to start somewhere." Captain Blake was quiet for a moment. "He'll be at the hangar tonight, doing some maintenance work on the training planes. Around 8. If someone happened to stop by then, I don't think he'd turn them away." "Thank you," Daniel said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet," Captain Blake warned. "He's still hurting, still angry. This won't be easy." "I know," Daniel assured him, "but I have to start somewhere." That evening, Daniel arrived at the small hangar at the edge of the airfield. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Inside, Eli was working alone, cleaning a plane's windshield with careful attention to detail. "Eli?" Daniel called softly from the doorway. Eli turned, his expression guarded when he saw Daniel. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," Daniel said simply. "To talk, if you'll let me." Eli returned to his cleaning, but he didn't tell Daniel to leave. Taking that as a positive sign, Daniel stepped further into the hangar. "I saw your press conference," Eli said after a moment, not looking at Daniel, taking all the blame. "Very noble." "It wasn't about being noble," Daniel replied. "It was about telling the truth. Your mother did what she thought was best for you, so I'm the one who made that necessary." Eli said nothing, just continued working on the plane. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I brought you something," he said. "It's not much, I thought you might like it." Curiosity winning out over resentment, Eli set down his cleaning cloth and took the box. Inside was a keychain made of polished stainless steel. Engraved on one side were the words Eli Reeves, pilot. "Reeves?" Eli asked, looking up at Daniel with confusion. "That's your name too, if you want it," Daniel said quietly. "But even if you don't, even if you're always Eli Jordan, you're still my son. Nothing can change that." Eli stared at the keychain for a long moment, running his thumb over the engraving. "I missed everything," Daniel continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Your first words, your first steps, your first day of school. I missed teaching you to ride a bike, to drive a car. I missed every birthday, every Christmas. I missed seeing you grow into the amazing young man you are." Eli looked up, surprised by the raw honesty in Daniel's voice. "I can't get those years back," Daniel acknowledged. "I know that. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be here for the years ahead, for your graduation, for your first job as a pilot, for all the big moments still to come." "Why?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why now?" "Because you feel guilty." "Because you're my son," Daniel said simply. "Because when I look at you, I see not just who I was, but who I could have been, who I still want to be." Eli was quiet for so long that Daniel began to think he should leave. But then Eli pocketed the keychain and said softly, "Maybe we can try again. Not as father and son, not yet, but something. A beginning." Daniel nodded, relief washing over him. A beginning sounds perfect. They talked for hours that night, sitting on crates in the hangar. Eli told Daniel about growing up with Maya, about his first flight, about his dreams of flying international routes. Daniel shared stories of his college days with Maya, of building his company from nothing, of the emptiness he'd felt despite his success. By the time they said goodnight, something had shifted between them. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a start. The next morning, as Daniel was having breakfast in his hotel room, his phone rang. It was Eli. "I was wondering," Eli said, sounding slightly nervous, "if you'd like to come flying with me today. Just a short training flight. Mom will be there too." "If that's okay." Daniel's heart leapt. "I'd love that," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. "What time?" 2 hours later, Daniel arrived at the Academy's private airfield. Maya was already there, looking surprised to see him. "Eli invited me," Daniel explained. "For the training flight." "He invited me too," Maya said, a small smile forming. "I guess he's trying to tell us something. They stood awkwardly by the runway until Eli appeared, dressed in his pilot's uniform, looking every inch the professional. "Ready?" he asked them both. The small four-seater plane was basic but well-maintained. Eli took the pilot's seat, with Maya beside him as co-pilot. Daniel sat behind them, feeling both nervous and exhilarated. He had flown countless times on his private jet, but never in a small plane like this. Never with his son at the controls. "Pre-flight checks," Eli said, running through his routine with Maya watching approvingly. As the plane taxied down the runway, Daniel felt a surge of pride. His son was a pilot. His son was about to fly a plane. With steady hands, Eli guided the aircraft into the air, the ground falling away beneath them. For the first few minutes, the cabin was silent, except for Eli's occasional communications with air traffic control. Then, as they leveled off at cruising altitude, Eli spoke. "I used to dream about this," he admitted, "when I was a kid. Flying with both my parents." Maya turned to look at him, surprise and tenderness in her expression. "I'd make up stories," Eli continued, his eyes fixed on the horizon, "about who my dad was, what he was like. Sometimes he was a pilot too. Sometimes an astronaut. Once a superhero." He laughed softly at the memory. "I'm sorry I couldn't live up to those fantasies," Daniel said from the back seat. Eli shook his head. "It's not about living up to anything. It's about being real. Being here." Maya reached out and squeezed Eli's shoulder, tears in her eyes. After a moment, she turned and held out her other hand to Daniel. Hesitantly, he took it, feeling the warmth of her fingers intertwining with his. As Eli guided the plane through a bank of clouds, the sun burst through, filling the cockpit with golden light. Maya's hand remained in Daniel's, a bridge across years of separation. No one spoke, but in that moment of silence, something healing passed between the three of them. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet, but understanding, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a new kind of family. 2 months later, Miami's weather was perfect, clear blue skies and a gentle breeze off the ocean. At the Miami Flight Academy, a small ceremony was taking place on the tarmac. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to present our newest licensed commercial pilot, Eli Jordan," Captain Blake announced, handing Eli his official license. Applause erupted from the gathered crowd of students and instructors. In the front row, Maya stood proudly, back in her instructor's uniform. The Academy Board had reinstated her 3 weeks earlier, after an outpouring of support from students and colleagues, and a strongly worded letter from Daniel's legal team about wrongful suspension. Beside Maya stood Daniel, clapping louder than anyone, his face alight with pride. Over the past 2 months, he had divided his time between Atlanta and Miami, gradually handing over more day-to-day operations of his company to his executive team. He had rented an apartment in Miami, a place where Eli could visit, a place where they could build their relationship at a pace that felt right to both of them. After the ceremony, as people mingled and congratulated Eli, Daniel pulled Maya aside. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Somewhere private." They walked to the edge of the runway away from the celebration. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the tarmac. "I've been thinking," Daniel began, suddenly nervous, "about what you said 2 months ago, about proving myself with time, not words or money." Maya nodded, watching him curiously. "I've tried to do that," Daniel continued, "to be here consistently, to show up for Eli, to support you both without pushing too hard." "You have," Maya acknowledged. "Eli talks about you all the time now. Those flight simulator programs you've been working on together." "He loves that," Daniel smiled. "I love it too. Getting to share my work with him, seeing how his flying knowledge makes the simulations better." He paused. "But that's not what I wanted to talk about." From his pocket he pulled a small velvet box. Maya's eyes widened. "I'm not asking right now," Daniel said quickly. "I know we're still finding our way back to each other. I know trust takes time to rebuild." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. "But I wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, this is waiting. I love you, Maya. I never stopped, even when I didn't realize it." Maya stared at the ring, then at Daniel. "This is crazy," she whispered. "We barely know each other anymore." "Maybe," Daniel agreed. "Or maybe we know the most important things already, that we both love Eli more than anything, that we both regret the years we lost, that despite everything, we still feel something when we look at each other. Maya couldn't deny that. Over the past 2 months, as they'd navigated co-parenting and rebuilding trust, the old feelings had resurfaced, stronger, more mature, but undeniably real. "I don't need an answer now," Daniel assured her, closing the box. "Just think about it." "About us." Before Maya could respond, Eli jogged over to them. "There you are, everyone's looking for you. They want photos with the proud parents of the new pilot." Maya and Daniel exchanged a look, then followed their son back to the celebration. As they walked, Daniel slipped the ring box back into his pocket. There would be time for that conversation later. For now, this moment, this joy in their son's accomplishment, was enough. 3 weeks later, as the sun set over Miami Beach, Maya stood on the runway where she had taught countless students to fly. Daniel waited nervously beside a small plane, Eli standing next to him with a camera. Maya walked toward them, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. When Daniel had asked her to meet him at the airfield after hours, she hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected to see the words, "Will you marry me?" painted on the side of the plane. "Too much?" Daniel asked when she reached him, a sheepish smile on his face. Maya laughed, tears in her eyes. "Just enough," she said softly. Daniel took her hands in his. 24 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go. I spent all that time building a fortune, but missing the things that really matter." He glanced at Eli, then back to Maya. "I don't want to miss another day, another moment. Will you marry me, Maya? This time I promise to keep both feet on the ground, right beside you and Eli." Maya looked at their son, who was grinning broadly behind the camera. "Did you know about this?" she asked him. "Maybe," Eli admitted. "Dad asked my permission first. I told him it was about time." "Dad," Maya repeated softly, testing the word. She turned back to Daniel. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, Eli snapped photos, capturing the moment when their broken family finally began to heal. The three of them stood together on the runway. As the last light faded from the sky, the past behind them, the future stretching out like an open runway, inviting them to take flight together at last. In the end, it wasn't the career success or the wealth that had brought Daniel true happiness. It was finding his way back to the family he didn't know he had, the woman he had always loved, and the son who had his eyes and his smile. It was learning that forgiveness is indeed the hardest flight, but the only safe landing. That love demands humility more than perfection. And that no matter how far ambition takes you, the heart's true destination is always home.